weekly column in investigative features, were finalists for and won a number of journalistic awards. His 2009 investigative report on expert witness fraud and Louisiana death case penalty won the Western Publication Association's Maggie Award for reporting in 2011. The week named Balko a finalist for opinion columnist for the year, and the LA Press Club named him Journalist of the Year. And I'm reading all the other things you decided on here, and we got to talk this all over with. Trust me on this one, you and I need to talk. All right? Because there's a lot going on. We need to understand that a lot of these battles we're fighting are happening in courts where we don't really know. The legislative piece is important, but that judicial piece right now, we're losing, and you don't even know that court fight is happening. So at the end of the day, if we don't start winning in court, everything else is moot. So with that in mind, Mr. Balko.
Thank you, and thank you to Antonio and the Peaceful Street Project for inviting me to come out here. I'm from Nashville. There's a little rivalry with Austin for the music town, biggest music town in the country, I guess. So, anyway, I like Austin so far. All right. So this is my book, obviously, Rise of Warrior Cop. And I wrote this. Well, actually, I wrote a paper for KOS 2006 based on the book is sort of an expansion of. And I wrote that paper because when I was at KO, I was covering civil liberties beat. I kept reading these stories about botched raids where police break into the wrong house. And inevitably, these stories would end with the police spokesman saying, this is an isolated incident, this almost never happens. You read enough stories about isolated incidents and you start to wonder how isolated they actually are. So I started looking at the issue. It was pretty horrified by what I found. Wrote the KO paper and sort of stayed on this issue for the next few years. We actually tried to get the book published a couple times and couldn't find any publishers that were interested. And interestingly enough, it was the crackdowns on the Occupy movement a couple years ago that really kind of thrust this issue back into the public eye and actually got publishers interested, and hence my book. So I'm going to get into the presentation now. Can we go to the next slide? This is Katherine Johnston. A lot of you may know the story. Katherine Johnston was a 92-year-old woman who lived in Atlanta, particularly bad section of Atlanta. And one afternoon around Thanksgiving, week of Thanksgiving in 2006, there was a narcotics team from the Atlanta Police Department out, sort of driving around. They saw a guy walking alongside the road that they had arrested several times previously on various drug charges, knew he had a rap sheet. So they jumped out on him, threw him on the ground, put a gun to his head, and we now know, planted a bag of marijuana on him. They then asked him where, well, basically they said, you know, we know you have a record, you know you have a record. You're going to go away for a long time unless you can tell us where we can find a significant supply of drugs. So he made up an address, basically, just to get him off his back. The address happened to be that of Katherine Johnston. Now what's supposed to happen at this point is the police are supposed to do what they call a controlled drug buy. They're supposed to get a confidential informant to wear a wire, possibly give them some marked bills, go send them to the house to buy some drugs. Then they go get their search warrant from a judge, and then they conduct their drug raid. The problem is that could take 2 or 3 days, and they didn't want to wait that long. These drug stashes could be moved from place to place pretty quickly. So they lied. They made up an informant, lied on the search warrant affidavit. For those of you who watched The Wire, Fuzzy Dunlop is the name of the phantom informant that the police officers use, the non-existent informant. So they lied on the search warrant. They got their, they lied on the affidavit. They got the search warrant within a few hours. It was actually literally rubber stamped by a judge who had a rubber stamp of her signature just for drug warrants because she saw so many over the course of the day. And within a few hours, they were breaking down Katherine Johnston's door. Katherine Johnston woke up to the sound of people breaking into her home. She had an old rusty revolver she kept by her bed to scare people off. Again, this was a bad neighborhood. She had bars in the door. When they finally got the bars down and came into her living room, she was standing there greeting them, holding her revolver. Police opened fire, shot her several times. They initially said that she shot first. We now know that was a lie. The revolver that she had didn't work. And after they shot her, a couple of the officers in the bullets ricocheted and hit a couple of the officers. They called for 2 ambulances for the 2 wounded officers. They did not call an ambulance for Captain Johnston. Instead, they left her to bleed to death on the living room floor, handcuffed, while one officer went down to the basement to plant their marijuana that they were going to say their informant bought off of her. Well, now they realize they're going to have to cover their tracks, right? They're going to have to find an informant who's going to say he was the informant on the search warrant. So they go to this guy that they've used in the past, and informants tend to be pretty shady characters. They're either addicts themselves, rival drug dealers, people who are trying to get their own criminal charges dismissed. And to its credit, this informant would not play alone. There's this amazing 911 call that you can actually find the audio still on the internet, where he calls 911 from the back of an Atlanta squad car and says, sort of amusingly, "Give me the FBI." And he goes on to say that they're trying to say that I helped them kill that old lady, and I'm not going to play along with that. The police officers who were pressuring him overhear the conversation. At some point, he realizes that he's about to be threatened, so he jumps out of the car and starts running. There's this incredible chase through downtown Atlanta, where they're chasing him through businesses and the lobby of a hotel. He finally finds a phone. He was working as an informant with the ATF at the time as well. He calls his handler at the ATF, who then swoops in with the car, picks him up, and drives him off into the suburbs. They put him up in a hotel, and now we've got a full-blown scandal. There's a federal civil rights investigation, and what they found is what happened in the Captain Johnston case was rampant at the Atlanta Police Department. The lying on the search warrants was common, the wrongdoer raised. In fact, the Atlanta City Council held hearings about a month later. Literally dozens of people came forward to say they had also been wrongly raided by Atlanta's narcotics team, including one woman who lived a few doors down from Captain Johnston, who was in her 80s, who also kept a fake gun by her bed to scare people off. They managed to hold their fire in that case. The other thing the federal investigation found is that the narcotics cops in Atlanta all had quotas. They had to arrest so many people per month. They had to seize a minimum quantity of drugs each month. And there was enormous pressure on them to meet this quota. Their job performance reviews, their raises, the promotions were dependent on them meeting these quotas. So there was a lot of pressure on them to take, basically, there was a lot of incentive for them to take shortcuts instead of following the constitutional the protocols that comply with the Constitution when conducting these raids. This was not in the federal investigation, but the Atlanta Police Department itself had a sort of quota. Because the department was competing with every other police department in the country for a limited series of federal grants that were directly tied to drug policing. These are grants that every police department in the country competes for. And it provides a strong incentive for police departments to prioritize drug policing over crimes that have actual victims. Now, you could argue that maybe Atlanta was the only police department in the country where this was happening, and it just happened to be the one police department that got caught. That seems a little naive, given that these incentives that caused these trickle-down incentive problems exist for every police department in the country. It's a safe bet that this is happening elsewhere. And in fact, there have been other botched raids and innocent people killed in raids and subsequent investigations that shows that this has, in fact, happened elsewhere. Let's go to the next slide. So, I opened with Captain Johnston's story because it really embodies sort of everything that's wrong with this issue. And so now I'm going to get into a little bit of history. The book goes into far more extensive history. But this is a quote that's commonly attributed to Winston Churchill, although I actually can't find any proof that he said it. But it was a sentiment that was common in the Cold War era, right? This is what distinguishes us from the Eastern Bloc countries, right? From East Germany and the Stasi, right? And in democracies and free societies, the government does not send in armed men dressed in black to kick down your door in the morning. And I would submit that not only have we gotten far away from this sentiment, it's actually worse than this, right? Because a lot of times they don't even bother to knock. Move to the next slide, please. Sure, a lot of you are familiar with this term. Again, there's a more extensive history behind this term, but basically this is the sentiment that is long held in this country, in the United States, that we need to keep a firm wall between police and the military. They have two very different missions. The job of the military is to annihilate foreign enemies, to kill people and break things. The job of a police officer is to protect and serve, right? To keep the peace, to protect our constitutional rights. It's dangerous to conflate these two ideas. And to be honest, for most of American history, we've actually done a pretty good job of keeping the military out of domestic policing. And in fact, one of the institutions that's done that seems to hold the posse comitatus value most dear is the military itself. There have been a number of periods in American history where some stupid politicians have tried to bring the military into domestic policing. Most notably in the 1980s with Reagan and some members of Congress actually wanted to bring active duty troops in to start conducting drug raids and doing drug arrests. And it was actually the resistance from the military that held this up. Can we go to the next slide? This was testimony before Congress by Thomas Olmsted, who at the time I think was either number 2 or number 3 man at the Pentagon. And this was him pushing back against this idea. It was bipartisan. Leaders from both parties were trying to bring the military in to fight the drug war. And to his, again, to their credit, it was the military that really pushed back on this. And this, I won't read the quote to you, but Olmsted is basically warning that when you bring the military in to do civilian policing, you basically bring about an end to civil free societies. You go to the next slide, please. So, we've done a good job keeping the military out of domestic policing. What my book argues, and what the rest of this talk will argue, is that we've done a poor job of guarding our flanks, so to speak, to borrow some military terminology. We've allowed and encouraged our domestic police officers to become more like the military. When it comes to how they approach their job, how they see the citizens that they interact with, the kinds of tactics they use, if our police officers see themselves as soldiers, if our elected officials are telling them they're soldiers, if the citizen sees them as basically an occupying force, there's really no difference between domestic police acting as soldiers and having actual soldiers patrolling the streets. In fact, we'll get into this a little bit later, but there's actually, I actually have come to the opinion that it may actually be quite a bit worse, that in some places we would actually probably be better with the military patrolling the streets than the police officers that we have now. So we're going to play a little game. It's called Copper Soldier. So I'm going to show you a photo. You're going to tell me it's a cop or a soldier. Now all these photos are from police officers in the United States, or police agency in the U.S., or an American soldier. Let's go to the first slide. Cop or soldier? That's a cop.
Soldier.
Soldiers. Next.
Cop.
Yeah, I gave it away with the star and the sleeve there. Next one.
Soldiers.
Everybody misses that one. Those are cops. Next.
Cops.
Cops. Next.
Cops.
The equipment's no good.
Soldiers.
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 That is an Oregon State Trooper. So, this is a cop, by the way. So, a little more history. In the late 60s, mid-late 60s, early 70s, when we start to see the kind of modern era of police militarization. And there are two trends that are going on that started in the late 60s. The first is the rise of the SWAT team, and that's thanks to this fellow, Daryl Gates. Gates was in charge of LAPD's reaction or response to the Watts riots in 1965. And Watts riots were unlike anything this country had ever seen before. Most of the time when there had been riots, they would be isolated in one part of the city. The Watts riots, although they're named the Watts riots, actually spread well beyond Watts. And Gates actually thought that it was more like a kind of urban guerrilla warfare. That there were snipers that were picking off firemen that were going to put out fires that rioters had started. It was really to Gates, it was a pretty terrifying situation. And he thought that LAPD did not have an adequate way of responding to this kind of civil unrest. And of course, this was a time in our history when it was reasonable to assume that there was going to be a lot more of this. So Gates got this idea of putting together an elite, highly trained team of police officers who could be summoned on a moment's notice and use basically overwhelming force to put down a threat, similar to the way special forces do in the military. He actually consulted with some Marines at Camp Pendleton and came up with this idea of putting together this assault team. What's interesting is he actually brought the idea to Chief William Parker at the time, and Parker turned him down. Parker said that this idea tread too close to the line between civilian police and the military. It wasn't until Parker died a few years later, as Chief Redden took over, I think it was William Redden, that Gates then gets the green light to go ahead with this idea. He initially wanted to call it the Special Weapons Assault Team. A PR person within the LAPD said this might not be a good idea to have assault in the name. So they changed it to Special Weapons and Tactics, although the mission didn't change much. So we then see a couple of high-profile raids, one in 1969, one in 1973. The one in 1969 was on the Black Panther holdout or headquarters in LA. One in 1973 was on the Sindanese Liberation Army. And both of these were very high-profile raids against groups that a lot of America were fairly terrified of. The SLA in particular had kidnapped Patty Hearst, the newspaper heiress, and the entire country was sort of following this case very closely. And they thought that Patty Hearst was actually in the building that LAPD was raiding. So there were actually national TV crews there. You can find videos online of reporters sort of ducking under cars as bullets were whizzing by. And it really kind of propelled the idea of the SWAT team into the national culture, the pop culture. Within a few years, you had SWAT, the TV show. Actually, I think if we go to the next slide. Yeah. Here's the Milton Bradley SWAT board game. You have SWAT lunchboxes, little die-cast SWAT mobiles that